Good morning and welcome. You're listening live to Heart, a program which aims to help you understand and to become your loving self. This is Dr. Mitra Rashidian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sexologist in private practice.
And I'm Dr. Robert Jaffe. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm a certified hypnotherapist as well. And I'm here with Dr. Rashidian to share with you some of what we've learned over many years of study and practice on how to feel more loving and joyful every day of our lives.
You know, I was listening to our music, the music for the program.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so alive, so vibrant, and so romantic at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yes,
it is. Yeah.
I just love it. I'm grateful for the selection that we have for the music.
Mm-hmm.
So,
We dedicate this program to you, our listeners, and those of you who are watching us on video, so listeners and viewers. And we want to let you know that we always dedicate this program to you because you are the reason that we're here. We're here to help you to understand yourself. We help you to understand other people. And we also want to let you know that you are born into the world as your loving, authentic, true selves. We come in, I should say, open, curious, sexual, and trusting, and we also have the ability to be calm, emotionally available and connected, as well as confident and compassionate.
yes, and if you wish to receive more information about the two of us, please visit our or program page, I should say, and then there are contact information, and of course you can find us online. You can Google us. We're easy to find, and you can go to Psychology Today for both of our information. Anyway, the point is that we're here, and we are going to bring to you a variety of topics about everyday life, everyday people's struggle, everyday people's progress, how to make a better place for ourselves in this world, and how to be a loving true self, a concept that's pretty much misunderstood, a concept that's pretty much not so much known about it, and a process of self-compassion, self-love. And these are the elements that people sometimes consider it selfish. And I tell you, there is nothing wrong to be selfish. But we will explain that to you so you can have a better understanding of it. And one of the concepts that we follow and we do and we want to focus on, at the beginning of each show, we provide you with the code of the day, which that code pretty much sets the tone for everything that we're going to bring to you across the program and for our future program. Basically, we are a big fan of Subconscious Runs the Show, and that's the name of our book that's coming up soon. And so everything we say is about how we are programmed subconsciously, and how everything we do is based on that part of our life, and then we are basically guided by our subconscious. And of course, this is a big Freudian philosophy and theory, right?
A big what?
Freudian theory.
Oh, Freudian.
Yes.
Yeah, Freudian.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so here we go. The code of the day we have. Dr. Jaffe, would you like to read that for us?
Here we are.
Here we go.
Here we are. Here's the quote of the day. Once we become consciously aware of just how powerful our thoughts are, we realize that everything in our life is exactly how we allow it to be.
That's exactly what we just, introduced.
Exactly.
Right? Subconscious, and then how subconscious runs the show. And I have to say, I'm looking outside the window today, and there is such a beautiful clouds sitting, at the top of the hills here, and it's just such a breathtaking view from where I'm looking at. And I don't know if you can see it. I maybe have a rainy day today, so that's beautiful. Okay, so exactly, let's talk about this quote a little bit. And of course, this is by Melanie. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Coulouris. Coulouris, yes.
Melanie
So
Coulouris.
yes, and we appreciate Melanie for coming up with this beautiful quote, and we are delighted to use it, as an opening of our show today. We appreciate that. So last week we started talking about our tagline.
Well, our tagline, which is actually the name of our show,
Right.
we are Heart to Heart, which is the name of our company. And under Heart to Heart, we have a lot of things that we're doing. We have a YouTube station. We're just finishing up our first ebook, and we're writing another book, regular book for publishing. And the name of this show is Lose Your Ego, Find Yourself. And what we mean by that is, well, since the ego is the part of us that is in charge of our physical survival, we can't actually lose our ego, because there aren't too many of us that aren't concerned about their physical survival, as we're certainly seeing right now with the coronavirus. There's so much fear and concern about physical survival, and that will never be gone as long as we are here in these bodies. But so we're not actually going to lose our ego, but what we can do is we can reduce the power of the ego and become less fearful. And as we do, then we begin to find ourself, and self is with a capital S, and the self that we're talking about is the part of us that is the spiritual part. And we're not going to be talking here about religion, but we're going to be talking about spirituality. And spirituality is about that part of us that is the being part of us. So we are all human. The human is the, I'm going to say animal part of us, the part of us that has bodies, and we take in food, and we excrete waste, and we are sexual, and all of that we share with other animals. And then there's the being part of us, which is the spiritual part, and that's the part of us that's capable of extreme feelings of kindness, of appreciation, of certainly of love, and other animals can share that too. So I'm not saying other animals don't have spirits, but we certainly do. And the spiritual part of us is the part of us that when we increase our awareness of, and we decide that that's where we want to be acting from and feeling from, that's when we grow and are helpful to the world as well as to ourselves. So that's what we mean when we say lose our ego, lose your ego, and find yourself.
So at this point, I'm sure that this is a new program, and our audience, listeners, they may have a number of questions, about ego, about the spirituality, about the authentic true self, and let's provide them with a phone number that they can contact us, so that if they have any questions, right?
Absolutely.
So here's our phone number here live at the studio: 951 area code 922-3532. That's 951-922-3532. And we do welcome your comments, your questions. We do invite you to call us and share with us what you think, what's your thoughts about your spirituality, how that impacts you, your ego, if you have experienced it, if it is known to you or if it is unknown to you. These are all one of the reasons we're here is to share our experiences, our expertise with you, so you can benefit from it. I know that we can meet everybody here in our practice, and that's why we're trying to reach out to the community this way. And we would like to invite you to contact us. Without you, this show is not going to happen. And also your questions are contribution to so many other people who do not have access to many form of contacting us, but they can hear us, and therefore your question is going to help so many people locally and globally, and we welcome you to do that. So 951-922-3532. So Dr. Jaffe, we're talking about the spirituality, we're talking about ego. So let's kind of give some insight about how you bring spirituality and ego together.
Well, so people come into the world, and we're sort of blank slates, but not totally, right? Because there are people who come in, and we know that everybody has their own particular talents and abilities that we're born with, but we come in sort of blank, not knowing what we're going to be doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And we are all born as creators, right?
Only if you believe that. How many people they say, oh, I'm not a creative person at all, like I can't even draw in a straight line if I want to do painting.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's a habit of not looking at ourselves in a positive way and feeling negative about ourselves, and therefore not even see that creative part of us that essentially everybody has. But some people get the opportunity to develop that, some people don't.
Well, I actually don't believe that.
Okay.
I think that everybody has an opportunity to develop it. And as you said earlier, the subconscious runs the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I'm talking about opportunity, I'm talking about societal opportunity.
Yeah. And my own belief is that we all have not necessarily an equal opportunity, because the world is far from fair, at least according to human viewpoint, right? We can't say it's fair, because there are people who are definitely born into a world of poverty or into a world of abuse, and other people who aren't. So in that way, of course, it's not fair. But that doesn't mean that people aren't creators.
No, people are creators.
Yeah, we are creators, whether we accept that truth or not, which is what the part that I was taking issue with, because you said some people don't understand it. And yes, you're right, some people don't understand it. But thoughts are energy, and what Einstein proved is that energy and matter are actually interchangeable. And so thoughts are actually things, and the thoughts that we think lead us to the creation of emotions. The thoughts create the emotions, and the emotions and the thoughts together create the behaviors. And then the behaviors that we put out into the world responds accordingly to whatever behaviors, thoughts and feelings we're putting out. So when I say we're creators, what I'm saying is that whatever we choose to believe, Henry Ford said, if you think you can or if you think you can't, either way you're right.
Yes.
And that's what I mean when I say we're creators, because there are people who think they can, and who pursue that belief, and show themselves and the world that they were right. And there are a lot of people who think they can't, and put out that belief, and they show themselves and the world that they were right. So that's what we're talking about. And when we're talking about yourself is of course a combination of your ego and your spirit. But if we give whatever we focus on in the world becomes something that grows in our thoughts, and therefore in our behaviors, and that's what we're creating, is whatever we're focused on. So if you want to focus on the negative, within your about yourself or about others, that will grow. And if you want to focus on the positive within yourself and within others, that will grow. And that doesn't mean that just because you're thinking positive for a minute or a day, that positive thing is going to come to fruition. But if you continuously think positive, that will come to fruition over time.
Well, I like to point out that one of the reasons that this happens is once we continuously maintain a positive attitude and a positive outlook, our brain function works at a level that is relaxed, that is not pressured, and then that creative part of us that you were talking about can emerge easily. We are going to be open to examine our thoughts, to even to put to practice and experience our thoughts and feelings, and therefore feel kind of confident and comfortable to understand them and evaluate them. Even we will feel confident to change our mind, and it's not like I have to be right on the first round of examining my thoughts and my feelings and my abilities and what I want to do, kind of things. And that positively gives us the sense of confidence that we all are looking for, the
Right.
sense of I'm worth it, my thoughts and my wants and my desires are worth it, and therefore I want to put them in practice, I want to experience them. And this is how we develop that creative part of us, and then we get connected to it and we understand it.
Exactly.
Right. So however, when we have a negative attitude to life, to ourselves, we don't feel good about ourselves, so we kind of shut down that creative part of us, and we allow all the negativity that we have kind of shadow our all aspect of our lives eventually.
Right.
And then we produce that and we put that negative energy outside.
Yes.
And then people are becoming resentful to talk to us. People are going to keep a distance from us. And then that impacts our relationship, and pretty much both positive and negative attitude and outlook that we have and view that we have about ourselves sets the tone on how we want to live our lives.
Correct.
And how we can be creative into design it and perform the way we want, or allow the negativity to limit us.
Exactly. And so, the golden rule.
Right.
Okay? Do unto others as you would like them to do unto you.
Right.
And so if you ask yourself, who would you like to be around? What kind of individual would you like to be around? And if you want to be around somebody who is uplifting, if you want to be around somebody who laughs easily, if you want to be around somebody who thinks highly of themselves as well as others, then you are moving more and more towards spirit.
Right.
Because those are spiritual values. The spirit's desire really is to be our loving, authentic, true self. And the spirit wants to be fair. The spirit does not want to win at the expense of someone else losing. And the spirit wants to feel connected with other people. And of course, the spirit's main important quality is the spirit wants to feel loved and loving.
Right.
Right. So to the extent that we allow, because we do have free will, and we can choose which direction we go in, and whatever direction we go in, that's what we're going to become in the world. And there's an author that I like very much, just recently deceased, Dr. David Hawkins, who was a spiritual investigator. He was also a medical doctor and did a lot of experiments regarding what the spirit is, and does the spirit exist, and how can you measure the spirit. He wrote many books on this. And Dr. Hawkins talked a lot about the spirit being the place where people feel and know their immortality.
Right.
Yes. And there's a part of us that it can't accept death, right? And I think the reason for that is because we have that spiritual aspect to us that in some way believes and actually knows that we're not going to cease being. But because we are living in bodies that do clearly cease being, many people believe that that's the end. That's the end.
Well, maybe at some point in our future programs we can bring the map of consciousness and describe it so that we can provide more insight about what we're talking about
Exactly.
here, and how people are at the place that we are. I know that we are probably getting closer to commercial break at this time, but when we come back, or even now, we can start to talk about when we're saying lose your ego, find yourself. In what way our ego is actually can control us?
Yes.
Right.
And so the question we're gonna talk about when we come back is the interaction between myself and the other person involving my need to be right or better than that person.
Right. So let's just talk about it, and until we go to our commercial break.
Okay.
So
here we are.
Here we are.
Here
right?
we are. We're about to go to a commercial break.
We're about to go to our commercial break.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just before we do, I'm going to say.
I think we are in commercial break.
Are we in commercial break? Okay.
Hello and welcome back. This is Heart to Heart. This is Dr. Mitra Rashidian, along with my business partner and colleague and best friend, Dr. Robert Jaffe. We're offering you Lose Your Ego, Find Yourself. During commercial break, it was brought to our attention that whether we are going to be doing on the phone therapy or Skype therapy here at the show. And the reason is, we have to say no, because we don't believe in that, as though it is not really going to be helpful, essentially. However, we are happy to answer your questions in a general fashion so that not only you but everybody else who's listening to the program can benefit from it. We don't want to give this, belief or illusion that your problem can be solved within 2 minutes or 30 seconds or anything like that, because it's like opening a can of worms and just let it go that way. And therefore we believe that your questions deserve a whole lot more attention, and you deserve to receive the exact insight that you need to have in order to resolve the issues. Therefore, the short amount of time that we have on the show is not going to be sufficient enough to provide you with that depth of insight that you need. But generally, we can answer your questions, and then you can take it from there and decide for yourself how you want to proceed with the next level and the next step. So we appreciate that this question was brought up to our attention, and thank you. I hope that this helps. And of course, what we provide, essentially they're going to be so much insight into different areas of life, and sometimes we pay more attention to a concept, sometimes less, but overall, depending on your question, we do our very best to focus on the questions that are asked from us so that we can give you a general information about that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Sure.
for saying that, and,
Sure.
and it was very well said.
Thank you.
So we left off,
Yeah.
And I was saying that when we come back, we're going to talk about the interaction between people, whether it involves our need to be right or better than the other person.
Well,
Right.
it's always about I need to be right.
Well, yeah. Interestingly, the need to be right is connected directly with the ego.
Right.
Right.
Yes. That's why we need to be right.
Exactly. And why is the ego so interested in being right? And I think the answer to that is because the ego's job is survival. And so now we're living and safety,
Yes.
right? Safety and survival. And now we're living in an age where physical survival and safety for most people, not all people, but for most people in our society, is not the daily struggle that it once was.
Right.
So that what we've done, what the ego then does is say, I'm not going to be out of a job. I'm going to still fight for you. Like the attorney on the commercial, I'll fight for you, right? So the ego says, I'm going to fight for you. That means that I need to find someone to fight against, right? I have to find some danger. And so what have we done? We've changed that into quote unquote emotional survival,
Right.
which of course is not actually true, right? You can't be emotionally destroyed, right? Certainly you can hurt somebody's feelings, but you're not gonna kill the other person's emotions, right?
Exactly.
But the ego doesn't care about that. So what the ego does is it says, if I need to be right, and when I'm right, then I'm going to be the winner, and the winner is sort of like the winner takes all. And what does takes all mean? Takes all means I get survival.
Exactly.
So what we do then is the ego looks for ways to be right, and the ego does this in so many different ways, and it can, and when the ego feels, and what the ego also wants is not only to be right, but the ego also wants the other person to be wrong.
Yes. Oh my God.
So the ego plays the game of perpetrator victim, right? And the ego says, I'm going to be the one in charge, so I'm going to be the one in power, and I'm going to make you feel bad, and that's going to make me feel even better. Look at me.
But it doesn't happen that way.
I'm standing with my sword above my head, and I vanquished 1,000 people. They're all lying dead at my feet. Look at how great I am. And that's what the ego gets off on. The ego gets a shot of adrenaline every time it's right. So
or every time it's claiming it's
well,
right.
every time it feels right.
Right.
Every time it feels right. So that shot of adrenaline is what we look for. And the shot of adrenaline is very, very powerful and very seductive, and actually can become addictive. So we see that, of course, in people who struggle with addictions, and one of the addictions, of course, is gambling. And when the person is throwing the dice gambling, and it comes up a 7, it's like, I won, and there's the shot of adrenaline. And then they throw the dice again, and it comes up snake eyes, and it's, I lost, and there's the shot of adrenaline. So they can continue to gamble, and if you ask them, they'll go, well, no, of course I want to win, but that's the intellect. The actual driving force behind it is the ego's need for the shot of adrenaline.
Yeah, so that's one area. The other area is definitely in relationship.
And in relationships,
with
yes.
others, which ego plays, the most part, as a matter of fact.
Correct.
The need to be right. We see that in workplace. We see it within marriage. We see it within relationship. We see it among children. We see it all in the society at large, all to begin with. And everybody pretty much struggles to maintain that position of I'm right and you're wrong. And we see that so much of an anger issue that happens, among between people, is about the need to be right. Sometimes,
Yes.
We see it in relationships, and we see it among partners when about their sexuality, that they need to be right. Whenever they want to have sex, is their right. They want to be right to want to have sex, and how they want to have sex with each other, right? And if one partner is not ready or is refusing, so that becomes, a chaotic situation, and ultimately can break the relationship if it is left unattended.
Absolutely.
So we see that ego is not just about the war between the spirit and ego. It's pretty much that's like an umbrella that covers all aspects of life.
Right. And I want to just reiterate, we cannot do away with the ego.
Right.
If we try to do away with the ego, we're fighting a war that we cannot win.
Right.
So it's not really, even though we say lose your ego, what we're really saying is reduce the power of the ego, and notice when you're in ego, and then say, is this really what I want? And the ego will always say, yes, of course, this is what we want, because we want that shot of adrenaline. We want to feel right. We want to feel, and the feeling of right is a feeling of power.
Right.
So we want to feel powerful.
So I like to, bring up this topic about ego. That what makes some people have higher ego and operate from that perspective, and some other people, they're not so much driven by the high ego, and they have a far more peaceful life. So I think, life experiences, starting from childhood, kind of sets the tone for whether a person needs to start believing that he or she is having a type of a hard life, experience of a difficult life, or is it going to be an experience of a positive, loving life?
Right.
So because ego by itself, it doesn't just decide to take charge of our lives, right? There are factors that happens in people's life that allows the ego to kind of become so powerful in order to protect the individual, right?
Yeah. So I want to say that I agree with what you're saying, absolutely. And I also believe that each person is born a unique individual.
Right.
So we come in with everybody comes in with their own set of strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
And I think the ego is certainly part of that. But when you're talking about as far as upbringing and as far as
Right.
cultural influences is also a big piece of it.
Right. I'm talking about psychosocial aspect of life that takes a person into a place where they're gonna be kind of on the edge all the time, or they're gonna be kind of happy, and they can live a relaxed life.
Yes.
So our upbringing definitely, I think, is a major factor that kind of triggers the ego functioning.
Yes, our upbringing, and certainly any form of abuse.
Right.
Okay, it can be physical abuse, it can be sexual abuse,
Right.
it can be emotional abuse,
Right.
and so abuse,
Trauma.
neglect,
Yeah.
and abandonment, abuse, of neglect, and abandonment are all traumatic experiences that are life-threatening to a child.
Right.
And once the child feels threatened, their ego is going to come out to save them.
Right. So this is how we are basically controlled with our ego, and then through that process, we develop beliefs about ourselves, which becomes our sort of a defense mechanism of how to live our life and how to interact with people. Right. And we have some of them right here. We talked about, for example, some aspects of here. So here we have, when I'm feeling down and things are going poorly, do I look for reasons to blame myself or blame others?
Correct. So blame is a function of the ego.
Right.
Now, what should we do when things are going wrong? And it's not about being right or wrong.
Yes.
It's about trying to resolve the problem.
Right. So let's get to that after commercial.
Well, we'll get to that after
Yes.
the commercial. We just got a few more seconds,
Okay.
and so again, what we're looking for is how can we reduce the power of the ego and become more loving and more kind and more gentle, and bring that into our lives and into the world. And that's really what we're here to do.
That's the game.
Yep. So we will return right after our commercial break.
So welcome back again to Heart to Heart, and Lose Your Ego, Find Yourself. Dr. Mitra Rashidian here, along with Dr. Robert Jaffe. We were talking about blaming ourselves or blaming others as part of our ego functioning. So let's do that.
Absolutely. And blame is something, oh my God, the ego loves to blame.
Yes.
We just love it.
As long as I don't take responsibility and I'm the victim and you're to blame.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we love that.
And I'm off the hook.
And back in the 50s, 1950s and 60s, we started to develop this idea that we were going to rehabilitate, people who break the law. And that was a wonderful idea, but it sort of fizzled out. We still have some of that going on, but not a lot. We actually love to punish, and so what we do is we like the idea of saying, oh, so and so hurt so and so, and they need to be punished, and the punishment needs to fit the crime. We're so caught up in that mentality, and what it does is it serves our ego's need to be right, and to feel like we're one up on other people. And unfortunately, we do that a lot, and so as a result, our prison population is overflowing, and the rate of recidivism when people go to prison and come out is still very high.
Yeah.
Because what we've learned is that punishment creates negative self-esteem. And when we treat people like crap, they come out of prison feeling like crap, and they feel like they have nothing to lose, and then they act in ways that are detrimental to themselves and to society.
Exactly.
So how can so it's very tempting to get into the perpetrator victim, because that's the good guy, and the bad guy, and the perpetrator is the bad guy and the victim is the good guy, and we just love to do that. And the more we do that, the further away we get from our spirit.
And I think one of the reasons that blaming is so easy to do, because it's equally, if not more, it's difficult to look at the inner pain that causes the hurt.
Correct.
And then people, instead of looking at their hurt, they look outside for cause of the hurt, and then therefore they project on the people that they are around them.
Yes. It's a very primitive way that we deal with things in our lives, and it's pervasive across the world. It doesn't mean that we have to do it that way, but that's the way the majority of people still believe that we need to act. And so again, and I want to say one other thing about ego is that because ego is so powerful, and because ego is so about physical survival, and because ego does give us that adrenaline rush that we get to feel right because we feel like, oh, I won, what happens is that when one person is in ego, it's very contagious. And so, because if you're standing in an elevator and one person gets scared, it's easy for the other people to get scared, and then their egos start coming out.
Right,
and so
we see that one person starts to run, and everybody else starts to run.
And now we have kind of a mass hysteria with this virus, and everybody, and not everybody, but most people are like terrified of this virus. When if you really look at the reality of it, the death rate of the virus, although it's higher than the flu, it's still very, very low.
Yes, I mean, I hear in the news, and I have seen it myself. I actually went to the market last night, and I was shocked to see I couldn't find not even one piece of bread, not even one bottle of water, and not canned food, things that they can be reserved for some longer period of time. So we see that how fear, and how fear of survival can get into people, and then they just go and they act the way that they do recently. We hear it, we see it, and but once they also hear that, oh, we don't have enough supply to do even the testing for coronavirus, right? So that even adds to the fear, that along with not having food supply in the markets, so that's good enough reason to make people so fearful and look for surviving, and then their ego comes out, and then people are angry at each other, and so on.
And you need to understand that the media, they're not stupid. So the media, wants ratings, and so the media always plays upon people's fears.
Right.
And so if you look at the media, you're going to become more and more afraid, even though the actual facts indicate that the fear level is way overblown, because the death rate, you know, is still extremely low. You know, you're in the high 90% range of, even if you get it, you're going to get over it. But I also want to add one more thing before I stop, and that is the key to staying out of this, which is to remain curious rather than judgmental of ourselves and others. But the curiosity doesn't give you the ego gratification that we get when we blame.
Right. That's blame. And I like to go back to what we were saying before that, which is, what we're saying is we're not suggesting for people not to be careful.
Right.
We're not suggesting that this is not dangerous.
Exactly.
Right? But what we're saying is that adding fear to that is just going to take away from the creativity that we talked about at the beginning of the show.
Yes.
To stay mindful about what to do productively versus, acting in a fearful way that actually can become detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
When we are in a positive mood, when we are in a careful mood, when we are in a positive attitude, we can focus on how to make things work for us rather than against us.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So then, when the difficult situations like this is happening, like the coronavirus is happening, maintaining that positive attitude is crucial in taking care of ourselves in a healthy way, and also offer help to those that they need help, rather than going to the stage of panic and a state of fear.
Right.
Right.
And of course, nobody talks about the fact that when we are in fear, it lowers your immune system.
Exactly. So we are more actually putting ourselves out there to get sick, and to get contaminated by this virus.
It lowers the immune system, because it inhibits. Fear is inhibiting, so it lowers. So the system, so the immune system and the systems of our body aren't working to full capacity.
Right.
And it also creates a state, like you said, panic, which then people will act based in panic, and how many deaths are going to occur because people are panicked, or because people are stealing things because they feel like they have to.
Right.
And so nobody looks at that, because the ego is so strong, and the desire to survive, and the ego goes, oh, here's something to be afraid of, let's come out and play.
Right. So this is a good example of ego functioning, that how our ego takes over and we become frightened, and then we look at other people for solution.
Yeah.
Right. Versus looking at ourselves and how we can survive and peacefully with what we have and what we can do for ourselves, rather than relying on other people. Right.
Exactly.
And then it's good to also have all these food supplies and water and all of that, but then again, we want to be also mindful that we need to share it with everybody. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So going back to ego and spirit, and how that plays out in relationships.
Right.
Because that's a big one.
That's a big one.
Well, what do you do when you're dealing with somebody who's an ego, and they believe that their view is the right view, which means that I'm right and you're wrong if you don't share my view. And that's where we've come to a large extent in our country, where people aren't allowed to have different opinions, and the ego loves that. The ego just thrives on being right, as I said.
Mm-hmm.
And so my opinion is the only right opinion, and nobody else's. And the spirit knows that the other person who is criticizing us or who is disagreeing with us is simply stating their opinion. And we are always free to accept, partially accept, or reject that opinion. And we don't need to bring out the ego and argue. We can simply say, I respectfully disagree. And when we do that, then we're actually helping our democracy to become what it was supposed to be. Because we were supposed to have a free exchange of ideas, and people were supposed to be able to respectfully disagree, and to even be passionate about their disagreement, but not to attack verbally and certainly not physically the other person for having a different opinion.
Exactly. So I think in our next program we're going to pay full attention to ego and relationship, because that's where the real life is. That's where we everyday life is. That's where this is how we interact with each other. And we would like to invite you to join us definitely for next week program to see how ego impacts our loving life, how impacts therefore impacts our own loving, authentic, true self, and how we take that part of ourselves into our relationship, which is work, among family members, friends, or sexuality. Every area of life, we see that how fear and unsureness and what has happened to us as a result of our history plays a big role into our lives today at the present time, and we will talk about that. And I think we are almost at the end of our show, and usually what we do, we close the show with our quote of the day, which today was by Melanie again.
Melanie Coolaris.
Coolaris.
Yeah, we haven't heard of her before, but we found her quote and liked it.
I think the quote is so powerful that I really loved it when I saw it. So this is what she said: once we become consciously aware of just how powerful our thoughts are, we will realize everything in our life is exactly how we allow it to be. So that's exactly what we are talking about here. And I think we have only a few more seconds to the end of the program today. And we want to thank you for joining us today. We would like for you to call us, share your comment with us, give us your questions, give us what you think, give us what you want, so that we can provide exactly that for you. Our number here is 951-922-3532. Dr. Jaffe, would you like to say something that we leave with that?
Yes, I want to just let everybody know that there is no such thing as a one-up, one-down relationship.
Right.
That we are all here on this planet together, and that to the extent that we accept that and that we act from that place, we create more love, more connection, and more joy in the world.
Yes, and we are living at a time that we need to be all careful about what we do. We want to stay safe. If you see somebody that you're kind of suspicious about your safety, please just focus on yourself and how you can take care of you.
Right.
And until the next program, we wish you well, and don't forget that all you need is love.
Love, love, love. Bye-bye for now.